Our next generation portable is officially named PlayStation Vita.
Vita does indeed mean life, and as we enter the futuristic year of 2020, enjoying our flying cars whilst holding gasoline for the upcoming Mad Max dystopia, we will likely see the final year for the undead handheld, but hey, not bad for a platform Sony stopped supporting 5 years ago. But before we jump into the news, a little update from last month's video, wherein I missed out on 2 games that released in the month of December, one of which I'll discuss in games I've played for the month, and the other, Wizards of Brandel, a Kemco RPG, which, as far as I know, only released on the North American PlayStation Store. I have reached out to them regarding other territories, but I've heard nothing back yet. Like I've mentioned previously, getting information about upcoming games on the PlayStation Vita is tough, so I'm bound to miss a couple of titles here and there, but as always, if you do have information about an upcoming game, then be sure to share it with me. With that out of the way, let's get to the news. To be honest, I'm not sure why I do this anymore. As usual, we'll open a little mailbox. Huh? What the heck? Well, I guess it was Christmas after all. Jesus? Is that you? Have you finally come to do what Sony couldn't and save the PlayStation Vita? Ugh. It's just nobody's favourite CEO, Jim Ryan. Well, actually non-news, but news nonetheless. When Jim Ryan isn't pretending to be Jesus, he also likes to shatter people's hopes and dreams through interviews. December saw PlayStation celebrate the 25th anniversary, and as part of that, the magazine Game Informer sat down and interviewed Jim Ryan. When asked about the Vita, he said, and I quote, "PlayStation Vita was brilliant in many ways, and the actual game experience was great, but clearly it's a business we're no longer in now." For any PlayStation Vita owners out there, this is hardly news. I mean, they stopped supporting the handheld back in 2015, and it's been on live support ever since from third party. They obviously have a focus right now on the consoles, it's what's making them money, but I can easily see a few years into this PlayStation 5, when the Switch starts to end its life cycle, that the shareholders can easily see the numbers that the Switch did, and Sony will probably end up having a second look at the handheld space.
But wait! There's more!
Also in December, the site that everyone pretends they don't visit, Pornhub, released its traffic output for smartphones, consoles and desktops, and as part of that, they included consoles, which also included information in the change in traffic share from 2018 to 2019, which seen a massive 23% jump for the PlayStation Vita. Now this won't be news to a lot of PlayStation Vita owners. After all, since its inception, PlayStation Vita owners have always been known to buy a lot of tissues. So that's all the news for December 2019. I'm sure we'll be back to our regular scheduled programme of no news next month. So it's time to get into the games I've been playing this month on the PlayStation Vita. So I guess I'll start this segment with a game I discussed the release of last month, and that is Foxyland. Looking at the trailer last month and the art style, I was expecting good things with this game. Unfortunately, it's just not very good. Like I said, the art style looks very good, but it's the gameplay that really lets it down. It actually feels like a first pass where they just thrown together some mechanics and none of it really gels very well. It feels a bit like a test demo of when you're just testing out different mechanics, to get a game working, and it seems like it just put it out. I do know it has a sequel, so maybe the studio improved on a lot of things to make a real game. But yeah, Foxyland is it's not very good. It's got the basic elements of a platformer, none of them are fine-tuned, so you'll end up dying a lot. It has a lot of the pixel-perfect collision problems that you've seen with old games like Super Frog HD that I mentioned a few months back. The kind of problems you get with a lot of old games where we've kind of evolved past that. We've built upon issues that we found in platformers. So it really just needs more time spending on it to craft a well-playing game. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend the game. Well, unless you want a really easy platinum, because I was only halfway through it and I already got the platinum. Like I said, I do know this is part of a series. Maybe the sequel will come to the Vita 2 and maybe that'll be better, we'll have to see. Now I also mentioned last month that I've never played a pic-a-pix game before, So Lightwood Games got in touch and they recommended pic-a-pix Classic for any newcomers out there because it has a tutorial. Now, I can't recommend a tutorial because I learnt nothing from it. It's just a series of images and I ended up going online to find out how to actually play the game. If you've never played a pic-a-pix game before, it's basically a series of grids that can be various sizes, and each row and column has numbers attached to it, and the numbers in those rows and columns refer to how many of the sectors in that grid need to be coloured in. So say you have a 5 next to a 4 in a row, that means that 5 blocks need to be coloured in together, then there needs to be a space between them and 4 coloured blocks. You then have to work out based on the size of the grid which blocks to colour in. Once you get 1 or 2 rows or columns down, the rest kind of figure out themselves as you go. I did notice it works best with the mid-sized grids. As with the larger ones, I noticed a really heavy slowdown, and the numbers were so small I could hardly see them. I felt like an old man, needed some glasses. So yeah, it does work best with the mid-sized grids. I wouldn't recommend playing the later ones. I also noticed the game was very battery intensive. So I'm not sure if it's very CPU heavy and it's draining all the power. So yeah, you'll be charging your battery a lot. As for the game itself, once you learn the mechanics, a bit like Sudoku, you can do every puzzle. It's just a matter of trying to work it out. A lot of it is based on what kind of image they give you, because you need a starting place of all these puzzles, and some of them are much easier than others, because some of them will give you a picture that fills a whole row, so you can work it out much easier from that. But yeah, it's very simple. If you're into simple puzzle games that you just relax and play whenever you want, whenever you're bored, or if you're in a waiting room or whatever, it's that kind of game. It's nothing exciting. I mean, you could make this game more exciting. You could convert it into a multiplayer game or even like a puzzle fighter type of game. But as it is, it's just very simple, cheap and cheerful. The other puzzle game that I played this month was one I forgot to include last month in games that released in December, and that was Word Maze, also from Lightwood Games. This is not a pic-a-pix game. Instead, like the title implies, this is a word search, but each word connects to the next to create a maze where you use up all letters in the word search. This was actually quite a fun game, to be honest, and there's a ton of puzzles in here. It did take me quite a while. Now, you don't need to do them all to get the platinum trophy, but I ended up doing them all anyway because each one is themed, and some of the words are a bit obtuse, so you will be using the little cheat function to see all the words available. It runs very smoothly. I didn't have any issues with slowdown like I did with pic-a-pix. The only problem I ever ran into with this game was that I found the whole word, but it requires a specific path. So say if you make a trail of the whole word using your D-pad, it won't accept it because it requires a specific path. So say there's an E next to the E you're using, it requires you to use that E for the game to progress. It's a little confusing to describe, but it's a very simple game. Once you get the first 1 or 2, you'll instantly know like, oh, this is how it works. So yeah, I'd recommend it if you're into puzzle type games. And now the final game that I wholly recommend, and this is a sequel that I mentioned last month. This is a sequel to Kid Trip, and this is Miles and Kilo from 4 Horses. Now, Kid Trip was an automatic runner, and I felt that was the most distilled form of the gameplay. As Miles and Kilo expands upon that with a sequel, it feels like it has more of a hefty budget. So it creates more of a story, and it adds bosses and even more mechanics because you've got a companion with a dog. Miles and Kilo also gives you the option to play it as a standard platformer, so you can go left and right, as by default the auto run mechanics are off. The problem is it works best as a runner because everything is set to a specific time. So if you use it like a Mario game where you start going left, then it kind of doesn't work because all the enemies and everything's a specific path that you get through. What I ended up doing was going into the options and turning on always running because it just doesn't feel right as a standard platformer. Now the added features like the bosses really did feel like a good change up rather than just doing level after level after level. Obviously they all include the same mechanic, but each one's slightly different, and just like Kid Trip, it's all about redoing the level to learn the pattern, learn when you can jump, when you can throw your projectile and just really recognising the patterns. This entire game, just like Kid Trip, is all about pattern recognition and timing. I did feel that the platinum overall was easier than in Kid Trip, but I had a lot of fun. It was another game that I dedicated about 3 days to just playing it constantly. So yeah, if you like Kid Trip, I'd get Miles and Kilo. It's a great extension to that series, and I wish more people played these games, as they seem completely unknown to most players. So that's all I've played for this month. So let's get into what's coming out in the month of January 2020. Now so far, I only have one confirmed title releasing this month, and that's pic-a-pix Deluxe from Lightwood Games on January 6th. Pic-a-pix is a clue linking puzzle solved by painting lines between clues which have the same colour and number. The number shows the length of the line which will connect them, containing 120 brand new full colour puzzles and 120 unique and more challenging mono puzzles. Obviously, just like the games I played this month, this seems to be similar to pic-a-pix but more colour based. Now there is another game releasing this month from East Asia Soft, but it's a complete mystery. They did tell me some details. They said it'll be a horror mystery adventure game, and it'll be releasing on the Vita in mid-January, but this will also be a multi-platform release on the PS4, Xbox One and Switch. Like I say, it's a mystery, so if you've got any idea what it might be, let me know. East Asia Soft also announced 2 physical releases that'll be up for order this month, while on January 2nd. Both will be limited to 1,000 units and are expected to release in March. The first one is Metal Gal, which seems like a Mega Man clone. I was actually quite looking forward to playing this, so I'll definitely order this one. And the other is a game that's not released yet, and that's Nightin Plus. This, I believe, is like a procedurally generated Zelda clone, or the classic Zelda anyway. The actual game releases either in February or early March, so if you just want the digital version, you can get that around that time. I'll be sure to highlight it in the next video or in March's. As usual, I'll leave a link in the description so you can order both of these titles. Now there might be a Ratalaika game releasing in January, but Ratalaika themselves at time of recording aren't quite sure, so that's up in the air right now. But yeah, just be aware that there could be a Ratalaika game releasing this month, but I just don't know the details right now. That's it for January 2020. Be sure to let me know what you've been playing over the holidays. I wish you all a happy new year, and never forget, Vita means life.